I'm Christiana Gaudet, and I'm here with more answers to your questions about tarot. This time, our question comes from Karen, and it's very simple. She's having a hard time understanding the Hermit and wants to know my take on the 9th card of the Major Arcana, the Hermit. Now, whenever we look at a tarot card, it's important to note that there is so much that could be said, that has been written, that has been supposed about each card. What I'm going to share is my thoughts, my go-tos, what has worked for me in regards to the Hermit. There's lots of other answers out there that will also be very valid. But here's how it is for me. When I think about the Hermit, I actually really like to think about the original Hermit. So this is the Hermit from the Visconti Sforza Tarot, the very earliest Hermit. And you can see that instead of holding a lamp as the Hermit we know today does, he's actually, what's he holding? He's holding an hourglass. And to me, that's really significant. Now, another thing I like to think about with the Hermit is he's card 9. And 9 is sort of this number of having achieved something. In numerology, 9 really is a sense of completion. There's a completion of the journey. And we can see that the journey of the Hermit is up the snowy mountain all by himself. But I want to talk a little bit, too, about the astrology related to the Hermit. We relate the Hermit to Virgo. And I just think that's interesting, and this is just in my head. You know how Virgos are always like really into being on time. They're perfectionistic in a lot of ways, and that's one of their ways. So I think it's interesting that the Hermit holds an hourglass. So when we look at the Hermit, what do we think about? What are the keywords that we associate with the Hermit? Some of my favorite keywords for this card include patience, loneliness, wisdom, higher education, knowledge, and serious study. I often like to see the Hermit in conjunction with other cards. I think the Hermit is one of those cards that really relates in certain ways to certain other cards. For instance, the Magician, the Hierophant, and the Hermit, to me, show a progression of education. I often say the Magician is the bachelor's degree, the Hierophant is the master's degree, and the Hermit is the doctorate, the PhD. So clearly, when I see the Hermit, I see some potential for education. And you know, I think when we talk about interpretations here, one of the things that will make this a hard interpretation for people is, on the one hand, the Hermit can be about being lonely. On the other hand, the Hermit can be about deep study. On a still other hand, the Hermit can be about great spiritual wisdom. The Hermit could represent an actual person that you know, probably an older person, or it could represent the quality of a person to be a loner, to be literally a hermit. So that's a really wide range of interpretation, isn't it? When we look for mundane interpretations in the Hermit, I think often the Hermit will come up to talk about loneliness, to say that you're lonely. Perhaps you're missing a particular person, or perhaps you don't have a lot of friends around you, or don't have a lot of time to spend with friends. So the Hermit may come up to say you need to pay more attention to your social life. The Hermit may come up to talk about education, or a need for study, or a need for deep spiritual introspection. Another combination of Hermit with another card that I like to look at is Hermit and the High Priestess. And I just think they make a great couple. In many ways, they're very similar. Now, the High Priestess is always female. Typically, the Hermit is always male, but there are some decks where the Hermit is female and takes on this crone energy, a wise old woman. One of the decks that does this is Spiral Tarot, one of my favorites. The Hermit teaches some interesting spiritual lessons, and when we study this card, we want to think about these lessons. When this card comes up in a reading, we might be reminded of these lessons as well. And the lesson is this: do not be afraid of being alone. Remember that being alone or being lone is not the same as being lonely. And remember that deep wisdom comes from within and comes from our dedication to study and to introspection. You can't go to a party every night and still get your papers done on time when you're in school. Sometimes you have to say no to the kegger and stay in and study. And the Hermit really talks about this quality, about this need. And so there's a spiritual lesson here in valuing our alone time and not being afraid of our alone time and making time to be alone and to study and to meditate. Now, there is something, especially when we look at the modern Hermit shining his light of wisdom for all to see. There's something we have to think about there too, is that there are times when we must seek the wisdom of the Hermit. And that means don't find the teacher who's in your face wanting to teach you, telling you what to do. Find the teacher that you must seek out, the teacher who has wisdom for you but will make you work for it. It may be that you are the teacher, that the Hermit comes up to say it is time to mentor someone. Now, clearly, the Hierophant is the card of active mentorship. I understand that. But the Hermit can suggest that it might be time to shine that light for somebody else. Now, the Hermit also advises patience. And often this card can come up to remind you to be patient or to tell you that a situation will require a certain amount of patience. When the Hermit appears in a reading, then, it could simply tell you to be patient or to study something or that you need to go to school. The Hermit may address the concept of loneliness in your life. The Hermit may tell you to seek a mentor or to be a mentor to another person. The Hermit may remind you that your alone time is valuable and not to be feared. Karen, I want to thank you for a great question. If you have a question about tarot, please email me.